Hi Aquarius, welcome to July 2018 Astro Updates. It's Rena here, and July is notable for a pair of eclipses that are occurring in this month, and I'll get to those in a second. The month begins with the Sun in Cancer. For you, this is a very practical area, the sixth house of work and health, and I feel like something to do with health is going to be important for some of you, because the solar eclipse is also occurring in this sector. Solar eclipses are powerful new moons, and so you could see a lot of new seeds being planted in terms of how you can improve your health, or having perhaps some kind of more opportunities for good health present themselves. Whatever that means for some of you, but also work opportunities, because that's what this house represents as well. But in terms of what I was speaking of about health, the lunar eclipse falls in your sign. And so that makes me wonder if you're doing something, you're ending something that maybe is not serving you. And it relates to the body because it's going to be in that first house of the self. I'll explore that more in a second, or talk about the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse in a second. But on the 9th of the month, Venus moves into Virgo. And for you, this is the 8th house of other people's money and intimacy. And this means that for the first 9 days, Venus is in the 7th house of committed partnership. So that's very good. That bodes very well for any kind of committed relationship. And if there was any kind of rumbles of discontent, Venus being in that 7th house can make things a lot better. If you have recently gotten married, or whatever the equivalent is, moving in with somebody, Venus going into that 8th house can mean that you're not just cohabiting the same space, but you are really touching one another's soul, because the 8th house is intimacy. A lot of people just assume it's sex. And it's about emotional intimacy as well. And ultimately, even when we talk about sex, the implication is that you are bonding with somebody at a deeper level, that it's not just kind of like we have all this proof that we are a couple. We have a ring, we have a contract, but that we're really connecting emotionally, spiritually. And that's what Venus in the 8th house represents. Also, the 8th house can be about money coming in, and this could be benefiting from a will. If you're married, benefiting from your partner's money, maybe they get a raise, or they get some kind of an inheritance. It can be anything like that, or you get a gift, and it's just something you didn't expect, but it's money that you didn't actually earn. So that's happening on the 9th. On the 10th, Jupiter turns direct, and for you, Aquarius, this is in your career sector. So if you have felt like things have come to a grinding halt career-wise, and maybe it's not a grinding halt, but maybe it just seemed like things were going at a fantastic clip, and it just kind of slowed down. Jupiter is a planet of luck and expansion, so in the 10th house, it's supposed to open doors for you. Well, that's going to be happening again if there was any kind of slowdown since March. And it will take a little while, because Jupiter is a slower moving planet than, let's say, Venus. So it takes longer for it to kind of get out of its shadow. But it will. And I think especially from August onwards, you should find that your career is in a better place. Of course, we do have other retrogrades, like we have a Mars retrograde. We're going to have a Mercury retrograde at the end of the month, but we're kind of dealing with a lot of these personal planet retrogrades, and throughout the the rest of 2018 until about December before we get the all clear. So that can be a little bit aggravating because it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or maybe it's 2 steps back and 1 step forward. I don't know. But hey, we got to celebrate these victories here, like Jupiter turning direct. And then we have that solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer on the 12th in that house of health and work. You may find that in the coming weeks, you seem to have much more ease at finding work if you've been out of work, because this can increase the opportunities available for you. If you have been looking for healing modalities, they may present themselves to you, so that would be wonderful as well. And then on the 22nd, we have the sun going into Leo, your opposite sign, in that 7th house. And it will be perhaps a romantic time with the sun in the 7th. And so you have the sun in the 7th and you have Venus in the 8th. So that's very good for people who are trying to really have very deep relationships. But one thing to note is that on the 25th or 26th, depending on where you live in the world, Mercury goes retrograde in this 7th house at 23 degrees of Leo. So there could be some kind of misunderstanding between you and a partner. Hopefully you have strong line of communication so that you can nip it in the bud. But perhaps this is something to do with some kind of document. The 7th house can deal with issues surrounding not only marriage or the equivalent, but also legal cases. So Mercury can be contracts, and the 7th house can be some legal case. It may have something to do with an inheritance, and you have to do some research about this, or they're going to make you sign something over again. It's not advised to sign documents during a Mercury retrograde, but if you have to, you might have to. Or maybe you get something sent back to you that needs more information in order to have things go through. It can be connected to your ex-spouse coming back into the picture. I mean, for everybody, Mercury retrogrades could be blasts from the past, people that you haven't heard from in a while. I think that happened to either me or my partner. Probably him, I'm thinking. But anyway, if you if you have been divorced, don't be surprised if you hear from your ex. And you might be like, what does he or she want? But yeah, that can occur as well. And a Mercury retrograde, if you're planning a wedding, there may be some snafus. There may be some miscommunications with the wedding planner. And if you're marrying pretty soon, like in, what's the big month? Actually, June is a big month, and maybe September. And it's funny, like everybody they all do the same thing. They get married at the same time, June or September. And it's funny because I worked for someone who was her sign was, I think her sign was Capricorn, but it was really on the cusp with Aquarius. And she got married. We worked in a school district together, and she got married in March, I think. And I was very impressed with that because everybody tends to do the same thing, and they get married in June or September. And so I said to her, wow, that is really unconventional. And I meant that as a high compliment. And she said, I forgot what she said, but it was just like, no, like not, she wasn't yelling at me, but she was just like kind of denying that it was an unconventional thing. It probably had to do with, availability or something. But as I said, she was a Capricorn. Now, as a Sagittarian, if somebody calls me unconventional, I'm going to feel incredibly flattered. So, it just shows you how different people are. But I really don't like when people always get married in June or September. It's like, get married in July, get married in October. Why do you have to just limit it to 2 months? But in any case, if you're planning, now I'm going to offend people that are planning a wedding for September. If you're planning a wedding, and maybe it is for August or something like that, coming up, there may be some things that you have to kind of make sure about. Maybe you have to make sure that the wedding photographer is going to heed your instructions. Or maybe it's to set the date. There's the future mother-in-law can't make it on that date, so we're going to have to change everything. So it's probably more of a irritation than a major deal, but I just wanted to give that possible scenario. And then one thing I want to say, though, is make sure that with you and your partner that you have an open line of communication. I might have said that when I first started talking about this. But yeah, because you could have some kind of misunderstanding with your partner and you don't want it to mushroom into something bigger, or even with a client, not to allow any miscommunication to go on too long. On the 27th or the 28th, depending on where you live, there is that lunar eclipse at 4 degrees of Aquarius. And this is going to be in your first house. Now, actually, if you're watching this for your sun in Aquarius and you're born maybe after, I'm just guessing, it might change year to year. But if you're kind of born around the 24th or maybe 25th of January and beyond, this lunar eclipse is actually going to be in your 12th house. And it's going to be more of a behind the scenes kind of thing, dealing with your psyche, it's connected to your spiritual path. And, it can be, I think even both of these houses, whether it's in your 12th house or your first house, can deal with letting go of an addiction. That is a big one when the moon is in Aquarius, and this is a lunar eclipse. But just letting go of an old way of living, perhaps. I do want to say that you have been dealing with these eclipses for a while now. You had a lunar eclipse last summer in your sign. And so now we are a year later, and I'm curious how many Aquarians have felt that their lives have changed dramatically in this past year. Maybe there are some. That's a possibility. And it's just like you're a fixed sign, so you may naturally tend to want to keep doing what you're doing without altering your behavior. And the lunar eclipse is like, okay, buddy, I'm taking this out because we don't need this. And I'll help you. So I'm going to create these circumstances so that you can let go of this behavior, which is destructive, or at the very least, keeping you stuck. Maybe it's not the end of the world, but it's keeping you from moving on and having fresh experiences. Maybe you're living in the past and you need to just like totally reboot. Okay, well, that's what I have for you, Aquarius. And I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like your own personalized natal chart interpretation, please click on the link below and take you to my website. And I wish you all the best in July. Take care. Bye.